and welcome everybody to this webinar. The title of today's webinar is Challenges and Opportunities for Europe's Scientific Research in Renewable Energy Technologies by 2020 and beyond. There will be two speakers. One is myself, Simone Landolina, and the other one is my colleague Greg Aerosmith. So I will move on immediately to the first slide, which is a short introduction of what EUREC Agency is. EUREC is an acronym for European Renewable Energy Research Centers Agency. And when it was founded in 1991, EUREC purpose, EUREC mission was to become the voice of renewable energy research in Europe. So to give European researchers in renewable energy technologies one single voice to speak loud to the European Commission, to the policymaker on behalf of the scientific community. EUREC today, after 18 years, is made of 44 prominent, mostly public research laboratories from all over Europe, active in research, development and demonstration for all renewable energy technologies. So these clearly include solar power, both solar thermal and photovoltaics, biomass, geothermal, wind, hydro and ocean energy technologies. But also include all those supporting technologies which are so important, like energy efficiency, energy storage, distribution, so grids, electricity grids and integrations. And you can see on the slide the names of our members, and they also include the JRC of the European Commission. So how the renewable interest is represented in Brussels. This is just to give you an overview of how the European community of research and industry interact together at European level. There is one single physical building indeed, which is called the European Renewable Energy House, where all these organizations have their headquarters. So what you see at the center of the screen, like the pillars, are the industry association. The Wind Industry Association, EWEA, EPIA, ESTIV, and so on. Each of them represent one specific industry, one technology. At the basis, you see EUREC Agency, which is cross-cutting in terms of technologies. We represent all technologies, but only from the perspective of the research centers and laboratories and universities. And then on the roof, you see EUREC. EUREC is sort of our umbrella organization. We are all members of EUREC, and it is the European Renewable Energy Council. So, renewable research, renewables policy, and renewable energy industry. Eurex Mission is, as Sergio was saying at the beginning, in short, to improve the quality and scope of European research and development in renewable energy technologies. Now, this is we accomplish our mission by focusing our activities in 4 directions that you can see here. First one being networking and information exchange in renewable energy research. The second one being fostering, facilitating and increasing cooperation between academia, research and industry in the renewable energy sector. Then with the active participation, being active players in the policy-making processes at European level through lobbying activities and the representation of the industry, of the scientific community we represent. And then being a solution provider for the educational needs in renewable energy technologies. So this was my introduction of EUREC, and the next step we will move on in analyzing one by one these 4 main directories of activities, but with specific reference to the topic of today, which is the challenges of opportunities for Europe's scientific research in renewable energy technologies in the next 10 years. So what I would like to do today in the next 40 minutes or so is to explore, together with the participants in this Leonardo webinar, what is EUREC's view of these challenges, and which are the concrete solutions, action that we carry on to foster renewable energy research in Europe. As I say, EUREC is first of all a network of renewable research centers, And so how do we define these challenges and opportunities? Well, we act as a communication hub, and this means that we manage a multi-directional flow of information, on one hand from our members, the scientific community, to the European institutions, and on the other hand from the European institution to our members when they ask for feedback in developing the European policies, and you will hear more about this from my colleague Greg Arrowsmith later on. But it's also a network and a hub of information among our own members. So we have twice yearly a college of members. We call college of members our general assembly. It is twice per year. The 44 research centers that we represent, they representatively convene in a single venue in Europe for 2 days to discuss a given energy topic. Just to give you a few examples, like last June, the topic was on smart grids, and the College of Members happened to be here in Brussels, while our new next College of Members will be in less than 1 month in Spain, in Bilbao, and will be dedicated to ocean energy technologies. Which brings me to the next slide. So the aim of this College of Members meeting is not only to bring our members up to date on who is doing what and what's going on in a given research, renewable energy research area. The aim of these meetings is also to set the strategic and research priority for the topic that we discuss in that meeting, and to find a common position on this. And then time by time, as we did in May 2009, we gather this position in a publication, and this publication specifically looks at the research priorities for renewable energy technologies by 2020 and beyond. It is, first of all, an independent publication, although we accepted some inputs from industry. I would like to specify to stress that it only reflects the view of the research community we represent. And it is for free. You can download for free a copy of the publication from our website, from the section Publications, and or otherwise you can, if it happens to you to pass by Brussels, you can have a free copy here. The rationale is that, as you may know, there has been in the last year a new emphasis on the rapid implementation of renewable energy technologies in Europe. We've got new targets for 2020 in terms of renewable energy production, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of CO2 reduction. So our community decided to ask themselves how research can and should contribute to the achievement of those targets. This is the rationale behind the publication, and the publication itself is structured. Is not structured by technology, so wind energy, solar power and so on, but rather by energy use. So we look at electricity in the first chapter, at heating and cooling, and at transport fuels, or rather energy applications in road transport. Okay. Methodology. Research priorities have been defined on the basis of a broad consultation involving the scientific community. This means that over 40 authors from the European research centers and plus some external contributors have been working to this publication. And I would like to mention just very briefly a special thank to our 4 lead authors of the 4 chapters, which are Nicola Piersa from Northumbria University in Newcastle, Simon Watson from the Loughborough University, Hans Müller-Steinhagen from DLR, and Cornel Kovacs from the University of Szeged. The primary focus is on the research fields where to invest in the coming years. This is a very straightforward statement, and it looks at how to reach the 2020 targets. Of course, we have also had a look beyond 2020, and we have considered which are the high potential research areas for 2030. They've been identified as well, at least some of them, and with an eye on how to enable cost reductions in the conversion technologies, how to make sustainable energy, in other terms, increasingly convenient and reliable. As you will certainly understand, I will not have the time today in this webinar to go through every single priority, scientific and technological priority, which we list in this publication. So my aim for this first part of my presentation is just to give you an overview of the content. The electricity chapter, we look at what we can deliver by 2020. And clearly this will depend on the global development of the electricity supply industry. And it also will depend on whether we will be able at European level to fulfill our very ambitious energy efficiency roadmap, so in terms of energy saving. But if we achieve this, then renewable energy sources, in our view, will be able to contribute between 33 and 40% to the total electricity production by 2020. This will mean around 1,370 terawatt-hour of electricity from renewable energy sources. The chapter we look at research priorities one by one by renewable energy sources. So we consider wind energy, biomass, small hydropower, solar photovoltaic, geothermal, concentrated solar power, and ocean energy technology at one by one. We also look at cross-cutting research priorities. Indeed, smart grids and the electricity supply will be extremely important in the next 10 years, and as you know, it's not always possible nor efficient to produce electricity close to where it is consumed, just offshore wind, one example on all. Electrical distribution system will play indeed a very important role in the future, and for this reason we consider also electricity supply in the publication. On the other hand, we look at the demand pattern. We look at the demand side management, as it is very important to consider the research priority for smoothing out the electricity demand curve, because this will also enable generating capacity in a better way. And the second chapter looks at heating and cooling. I know that the Leonardo energy community is mostly a community of electricity, focusing on electricity, so I will not spend much time talking on heating and cooling from renewable energy sources. But just to say a few words, this is what we call sometimes the sleeping giant, because the supply of heat for domestic and industrial purposes at European level indeed composes over 50% of the final energy usage in Europe. And unfortunately, this is mostly generated via combustion of fossil fuels, oil, coal, gas so far. So for this reason, EUREC Energy scenario insists in a very substantial contribution of the heating and cooling sector to the 2020 goals. And here we look at the research priorities by renewable energy source. So we consider the three key renewable energy sources for heating and cooling, which are biomass, solar thermal, and geothermal. And cross-cutting issues are also important, clearly, and innovative building concept in particular, meaning the integration of renewable energy technologies in the built environment, and meaning also the control mechanisms, the control technologies. Then the third chapter is dedicated to renewable energy in transport applications. We know that for the propulsion of road vehicles, at present there is a currently near total dominance of internal combustion engines, which are fueled with fossil fuels. This is a matter of fact today, but in future, what the vision that we describe in our publication is of how renewable energy shall be delivered in a form of fuel that is comparable in price, first of all, to the fossil fuel it will substitute, and have a number of features which are also optimal, like energy dense and easy to handle, but meets a number of agreed specification, agreed parameters that will enable the substitution to happen in the next years. In this chapter, research priorities are not listed by energy source, but rather by type of fuel. So we look at renewable electricity, a renewable hydrogen, and a biofuels. And again, I move back then to our mission and to the second point, our second line of activity, which is the cooperation between academia, research, and industry. Is the building of a dialogue between these different worlds, with the productive world and the the research environment. And from this point of view, we have always considered a paramount priority for us to facilitate innovation and technology transfer, so the valorization of the research results. And we have been doing this in a number of ways at EUREC. This has happened at both I just want to mention two projects out of all. PRORET, which stands for Promotion of Renewable Energy Technology Transfer, is a project which ran from 2006 to 2008 and has developed and tested an innovative methodology for the exploitation of existing scientific research results. This is indeed a key point, technology transfer, to valorize the research which is accomplished, the results which are accomplished in the laboratories, and bring them to the market. The project has achieved results beyond our own expectation, in fact, by supporting the creation of 10 spin-off companies in the renewable energy sector, and with 2 license deals which are still underway, and with raising capital for 4.3 million euro in terms of private investment in research results from renewable energy. And this represented 5 times the co-funding from the European Commission we got. So it has been indeed a successful project. We are now working also to foster service innovation for renewable energy technologies. And I just mentioned very briefly KISS-PIMS as an initiative which is meant to accelerate cost-driven innovation in planning, installation, maintenance, and scrap of services which are of renewable energy technologies. So planning of PV modules, installation and maintenance, and it works with a complex mechanism which I will explain a few words. Basically, it is a consortium of partners, both from the industrial world, from the research, and from consultants, which look at how to improve, either from a technological point of view or from a business model point of view, these are small and medium enterprises that deal with the installation, maintenance, scrap, and planning on renewable energy systems. What do we do for them? Well, we grant them, they can benefit from a voucher of an amount from 5,000 to 50,000 euro, which they can spend to strengthen their business model or their technologies. So this is just to mention two cases of how we concretely foster cooperation between renewable energy research and industry, thanks clearly to the support of the European institutions as well. And I also want to mention as a second point the European Technology Platform, which is a concept EUREC has been involved with since the very early stage. Today we are in the Secretariat, so in the management seat of 2 important European Technology Platforms, one for photovoltaics and the one for solar thermal power. And we have contacts with a number of other platforms like smart grids, wind energy, biofuels indeed. I want to mention on the solar thermal the evolution which we have seen in this last year, because this represents really probably the most innovative initiative of 2009 in the framework of the European Technology Platform. We know now that there are 36 technology platforms which have been launched at the European level, and 6 of them are in the energy sector. One of these 6 was the European Solar Thermal Technology Platform, which has been working from 2006 to 2008 to define a vision for the sector and the strategic research agenda, meaning the priorities in terms of scientific research where we should invest in the next years to allow higher deployment of this technology and penetration, market penetration. Now, since 2000 and 2008, the 3 sectors, both from the industry research point of view of biomass, so bioenergy, geothermal, and solar thermal, decided to go together into the same platform, which is the European Technology Platform on Renewable Heating and Cooling, to define one single solution for the common need, which is heating or cooling, both from industrial purposes or residential needs. The way ahead is this one that you see in this slide, so that stakeholders led by industry have come together to agree now to a common vision for these technologies. We'll define the strategic research agenda in 2010, and then we will look at how to implement this priority. So how to implement the strategic research agenda with the mobilization of the adequate human and financial resources. You can learn more on the website that you've seen there. That's it for me. I'm glad now to leave the floor to my colleague Greg Arrowsmith, and just 1 minute.
Well, thank you very much, Simone. I'm EUREC Agency's policy officer, which means I'm pretty happy describing myself as the agency's lobbyist. And the three things that interest me most at the moment are money for R&D, energy technology policy, specifically the questions which relate to cross-cutting issues, such as, for example, the relevance of baseload generation in an era where we have increasing supplies of renewable energy on our grids. We might also seek to involve ourselves, for example, on debates over the flexibility that we need in our power grids. And a debate that's certainly coming up in the near future is about electric vehicles and the way in which we address the challenges that these pose on the grid. A third area then that I look at, and which I take positions on behalf of the organisation, is how we structure R&D in Europe and how we organise ourselves to perform our R&D as optimally as possible. So let's just turn immediately to the money. So why is it then that we need a constant transfusion of cash for doing research in renewable energy? Well, it's because cash plus economies of scale achieved through manufacturing technology at larger scale results in technology being cheaper, and we have to bring down the cost of renewable energy technology as soon as possible so that it can be more widely available and that we can reduce our dependence on polluting fossil fuel technologies. We also need money to stay ahead of the competition, and quite frankly, the competition as I see it at the moment is China, where it's possible to produce renewable energy technology extremely cheaply, for example PV cells and PV modules. And we also see that China is increasingly interested in other technologies too, like wind. There's a 120 megawatt offshore wind park being constructed at the moment, and Chinese companies are also exporting wind turbines for onshore projects, for example in the States, where there's an order for 600 megawatts of 2.5 megawatt turbines using technology that today is licensed from German, US and Danish companies, but in future might come from innovation and from results achieved in China itself. Well, I'm going to move on now to talk about opportunities for funding innovative technology at European level, and I think that the most interesting instrument from my point of view at the moment is Any R300, which was born out of the emissions trading scheme revision document that was finalised last year, describing how carbon permits are going to be traded between 2013 and 2020. Some sectors like cement, aluminium, bricks and tiles receive allowances for free, an allowance being the right to emit 1 tonne of CO2. And these allowances are handed out on the basis of historic emissions, and each year the sectors get slightly less handed to them, so that by the time we get to 2020 there's a 20% reduction overall in Europe in our CO2 emissions compared to what we were emitting in 1990. However, occasionally a new company might want to enter these sectors, and so allowances are set aside for this eventuality, and it's this set aside pot which is called the New Entrants Reserve. So anyway, last year the Parliament and the Council agreed, after a lot of pressure from Gordon Brown on Nicolas Sarkozy, that 300 million of these allowances in the NER should be set aside for CCS projects and for installations of innovative renewable energy technology, and that's how we get the colloquial name NER 300. The allowances are going to be cashed, and they're going to be awarded to projects dependent on the project achieving a verified avoidance of CO2, which means for CCS that CO2 has to be safely stored underground, and it means for renewables that the project has to produce megawatt hours of clean green electricity. Out of about 15 lines of rather hastily negotiated and sloppily drafted article, the Commission has had the challenge over the last 9 months to draft an instrument that's potentially going to provide billions of euros of funding, depending on what the CO2 price ultimately ends up being. And the Commission is essentially doing this alone, but every month or so it meets the Member States to discuss the progress of its ideas, and my members and I are also very keen to see latest technology adopted as rapidly as possible, so I've involved myself in this debate as well. And I've been talking to the Commission and also my colleagues here in Renewable Energy House and the different renewable energy industry associations to make sure that our ideas are conveyed to the Commission and that the Commission keeps us well informed about what it's thinking. But also for the members of EUREC, there's a day-to-day direct relevance to this instrument, because one of the key conditions for any operator of such a project funded by it is that the project has to share all kinds of knowledge related to the operation of the installation. So it's going to be possible, for example, to build up a database full of operational data on the downtime of the installation, the megawatt hours it produces, the tons of CO2 that it stores, and this data is going to be available for anyone who wants it to consult it and to derive interesting research from it. So our first concern then with Any R300 was that we wanted to see all of our projects covered, and I think we've managed to achieve this. Well, I'm not going to say that we've managed to get all our projects covered by the instrument, but certainly there are 31 renewable energy projects mentioned in the text of the draft text of the instrument, and this certainly covers many different sectors. But the challenge that we find most important and which is causing us most concern at the moment is the way in which the money is going to be made available to projects. And getting the money is not quite as easy as it might first appear. The problem arises because of the condition on funding being awarded dependent on the verified avoidance of CO2 emissions. And the Commission's lawyers are adamant that this means that any R300 money from the auctioned allowances will only be paid out as the project operates, meaning as it stores CO2 or as it produces megawatt hours of renewable electricity. Now, since projects that are eligible for any R300 funding must carry such financial or technical risk that they're not yet present on the market under current subsidy regimes, it is of course very difficult to know exactly how much their production is going to be. In all likelihood, we can assume that they're going to produce something, but they might not hit 100% of their expected production schedule. And because 90% of the investment in the project is made before it produces its first megawatt hour, then this isn't an ideal scheme for inspiring confidence in investors. Now, unfortunately, the option of making rather conservative estimates of the output of your installation is not really open to people who want to propose projects under the scheme, because the way the projects are assessed and ranked is well, it's based on what the amount of CO2 saving is, and so you find yourself caught in an inherent tension inside this instrument, which is that you have on the one side a selection process which disincents innovation, and on the other hand you have a legal requirement that any R300 has to be innovative. So I think that there are probably two ways out of this dilemma, and to my mind there's the uncomplicated way, which would be, I think, if we were able to hand out public money alongside private money, such that the private money was such that the public money was locked to the spending of the private sector during the construction of the installation. And then what you could do is you could try to argue with the Commission that it should make the requirement to save CO2 or generate megawatt hours a kind of formal or token requirement, so that the condition can be deemed to have been complied with only if 1 ton of CO2 is saved or 1 megawatt hour of electricity is produced. And the alternative way is, I would see, relatively complicated, and it would require some kind of an intermediary to provide an unsecured loan to the project, and for its lending to be on the basis of a business plan that that would see the project generating a certain income from Any R300 after it's been constructed several years in the future. Alternatively, the loan could be secured against a loan guarantee from a third party which has an appetite for risk, but I have a feeling that such entities which can offer this kind of financing are probably rather few and far between, and probably rather conservative, and that the project list that we see in Any R300 with its 10 megawatt turbines and its 5 megawatt installations of marine technology might be a little bit too saucy for your average financier's tastes. And also I see that with this more complicated variant, the member states might have to get quite heavily involved, and they might ultimately find themselves having to be the final underwriters of the loans, and this would bring with it various other complications. So, just to summarise then what we want from Any R300, we want our projects to, we recognise that our projects need upfront financing. We want any grants from Any R300 to be made available at the investment stage. And we think that Any R300 could supply them without the need to involve a third-party lender or insurer if the Commission takes a kind of mild and flexible interpretation of the condition that the award of money has to be dependent on CO2 avoidance. And I think that if we have these conditions in place, then we'll be able to move very fast with our projects, and if we can move fast with our projects, then it means that the money is available as different renewable energy companies are emerging from the economic crisis, and it also means that we stand a better chance of reaching our 2020 targets for renewable energy. And then I think that sadly, on the other hand, if Any R300 remains extremely complicated and it requires perhaps 2 years to put in place the different parts of the financing package, or if, for example, the Commission refuses to allow projects to be assessed for funding earlier, even if the financing can be simplified, then I fear that Any R300 might end up finding itself financing projects which are out of date even before they've begun, and that would rather negate the whole point of the instrument. So where are we at now? Well, I mean, there's a high-level battle going on between the Commission and the Member States for who's going to actually control the money. We are going to be talking to the Commission, pressing our points of view to them further. We'll be also talking to Germany, which we see as the member state that's the deal maker and the deal breaker on this topic. And we will be making points at the EUREC Policy Conference, which, by the way, is the 16th and 17th of November, and I strongly encourage you all to register and go along to it. And finally, of course, we're going to be trying to broaden the alliance of people who are going to be affected by this instrument and people who could profit from it by encouraging the kind of para-associations, the so-called technology platforms, to help us in influencing the Commission and the Member States. Right. We don't just have Any R300 as the only EU-level funding scheme available to us, or at least some of us don't. In the last 12 months, suddenly another funding scheme burst on the scene. In January 2009, the Commission announced the European Energy Programme for Recovery, which is its contribution to the fiscal stimulus measures that national governments were putting in place at the time. And in energy, I certainly can't remember a package such as this one appearing before. It's not completely unprecedented for the Commission President Barroso to raid, shall we say, the EU budget for projects that he considers important, such as Galileo, the EIT, or last year the food facility. But it's the first time that renewable energy has been the beneficiary of his largesse. And so within 6 months, from the start of the year till about July, about 4 million euros had been handed out as investment subsidies for offshore wind projects and CCS for gas and electricity as well, interconnections. And this money was a kind of marginal contribution to make sure that the project went ahead even in the economic crisis. And the view of our association was that it was a little bit dishonest, to be honest, to dress up a subsidy for CCS as fiscal stimulus spending, unless your idea of a fiscal stimulus is that the money should go towards consultants and lawyers, because it's certainly true that there's no CCS project in the near future that's going to be at the stage where concrete can be poured and metal can be bashed. So we would certainly have preferred to see the money go elsewhere on, for example, renewable energy projects which can proceed very quickly. Why was there no solar energy project in this plan? Why was there nothing on geothermal? Why were marine energy technologies and biofuels left out? And also, why was there nothing on energy efficiency, which to my mind is a very good candidate for spending when you need to do something which is in the long-term interest of a society and at the same time ensure that you don't get mass unemployment. So sadly, I don't think we're likely to see something like the EEPR again in the near future. I think Barroso fought very hard for it, and in the face of great reluctance from some member states, such as Germany. And I think that he had to choose projects which gave each country a feeling that they were getting juste retour, meaning money out of the instrument that was in some sense comparable to the proportion of money that they put into the Commission budget. Right, well, I think that because we're running a little bit out of time, I'm going to gloss over my comments here on the EIT. I can happily take your questions on those a bit later on. And just perhaps mention another instrument which is increasingly increasingly highly thought of in the Commission. It's the so-called European Energy Research Alliance. Now, I would say that there's certainly a point of view which is that the best way that you could fund R&D in energy technology in Europe would be to do it very centrally. I think there's possibly some people who would argue that if possible, if it could be politically acceptable, we should forget all about R&D funding at national level. We should put all this national money into one big European centrally run R&D program. Well, I don't think this is ever going to happen. So the next best thing is that countries themselves at least talk to each other about their R&D strategies. Sometimes, however, this doesn't happen either. And so what we're left with is basically Plan B by the Commission, and the Commission's Plan B was the idea of shortcutting straight to the major research centres in these member states and persuading them to work together. And that's the whole essence of the European Energy Research Alliance. Basically what the Research Alliance has to do is it has to identify the research centre members of the European Research Alliance have to identify the man-years of their staff and the equipment, in other words the resources that they're willing to put towards a jointly agreed and jointly executed R&D programme in a particular area, like PV, like CSP, like biomass, biofuels, whatever. That's what they've been doing over the last few months. They've been meeting regularly, they've been discussing who can contribute what to which particular domain, and we're now at the stage, hopefully by the end of the year, where final agreement on these joint work programs can be achieved, and where smaller peripheral research centres can be invited to join the alliance and to contribute, to associate themselves with the intentions of these larger institutes. I think a final word on this is that the ERA has certainly courted controversy. The ERA is a working principle that involves compromise, and to be honest, there are some countries which consider that the way that they organise their R&D is very well functioning, very effective. It keeps their research centres happy, and they're not willing to compromise at all. And I think that this is the position, for example, of Germany on the ERA. The other criticism that's been levelled at this alliance is that it's a little bit untransparent. There are only two organisations which are accredited to observe it, which is EuroHawks, the European organisation representing research councils, and the European Universities Association. And the smaller R&D centre, not involved in the ERA's deliberations at this stage, has felt somewhat left out as a result. Okay, I think I'm going to now hand back to Simone. I've got one more slide which just wraps up and looks ahead to the work next year, but I think in view of time it's now time to press on and pass the floor back to Simone.
Thank you, Greg. So we have seen with you that indeed the challenges that we face are not only of technological nature, and they are also so they are not only scientific and technological challenges, but they are policy challenges and opportunities. They are financing challenges and opportunities. And then we move on to the next step, which is the last one of today's webinar, which is the definition of which are the educational challenges for renewable energy technologies in the next 10 years. What we have seen is that with the growth of the renewable energy industry and sector as a whole, we are seeing in the last years a shortage of qualified workforce for this sector. And these issues are attracting more and more attention by policymakers at EU levels. Therefore, the position of EUREC is that indeed scientific research, on one hand, it provides the means to achieve the European ambitions of sustainable growth and competitiveness without doubt, but it is also an important educational tool for the training of the professionals of tomorrow, those who will design and implement the energy systems of the future. So our message here is that more efforts are essential in education, and I would like to add that this includes not only specific studies for renewable energy as a course topic in itself, but more focus on renewable energy topics being included in other degrees like electrical engineering, in mechanical engineering, in physics, in other traditional technical studies. We can have a look in the next slides very briefly at the some statistics of the recent years and forecast for the following years in terms of employment in the renewable energy industry. So we see here a beautiful chart on the wind energy sector. This has been developed by the European Wind Energy Association, EUREC, in 2008, and it shows that in the next 10 years the number of employed in the wind energy sector will be more than the double of today, and most of the jobs will be available in offshore. Well, this includes clearly not only direct jobs but also jobs indirectly created, like operations and maintenance will be extremely important as a source, a creation of job opportunities in offshore employment. If we look at PV, at the solar sector, the the curve rises steadily as well, and indeed this chart that you look now has been developed this year. It's been published in June 2009 as a joint result of a project of EPA, which is the European Photovoltaic Industry Association, together with a number of other partners within the framework of the PV employment project. And it shows how by 2020 or so, the total number of employed in the photovoltaic sector should be around 1.5 million if the legislative environment in Europe and the policy environment continue to be favorable. Bioenergy, well, must say here we do not have beautiful charts as those that you have seen for wind and PV. Why? Well, because bioenergy industry is huge, but it's also fragmented. And if you look at the entire supply chain, from the feedstock production all the way to the end, it is very difficult for us to quantify the total employment at EU level. What we can say is that EU accounts for only a small share of bioethanol production. It's a very important facility is in America, for instance, but EU is a prominent player in biodiesels. And I can also say that most biogas facilities in Europe today are currently in Germany and Austria, but Eastern Europe is looking with increasing interest to biogas opportunities. And in terms of detailed figures, we only have data for Germany and Spain, where we have statistics for 2008, when Germany had over 95,000 direct and indirect jobs related to bioenergy, and Spain in the same period had over 10,000 persons directly employed, so only direct employment is considered here. What we can say is that there are some estimations of recent studies from EUREC, which as I presented at the beginning is the European Renewable Energy Council, and WWF, which look at 2020 and which has foreseen over 500,000 jobs in biomass heating only, and almost 500,000 in biofuels, and as many as 2.7 million jobs in Europe in biogas. So altogether this is over 3.5 million, and over 3 million, sorry, and this is indeed will put much pressure on the policymaker and the educational institutions to create a new skilled workforce. Our answer since 2002 has been to develop a European master program in renewable energy. It's a program which I want to say since now that it is open also to non-European participants. It's a postgraduate engineering program which teaches the latest techniques and the most relevant aspects to pursue a successful career in the renewable energy industry. So it is very much industry oriented in that. It provides the opportunity to the participant to specialize in one specific technology, and awards to all successful students the degree of European Master of Sciences in Renewable Energy. A few highlights on the Master. The courses are taught, the European dimension first of all. Courses are taught at 7 different European locations in 5 EU countries: Germany, France, Spain, UK and Greece. So there is a mandatory mobility component, because students have to complete different components in different universities and countries. And this is very important for us, because students are given the opportunity to study and practice in research facilities in different universities and different laboratories. The duration is 16 months, and it is mostly dedicated to engineers. And it is divided in 3 parts. First semester is the core. Second semester is specialization, and it ends with the project. So the first semester provides solid foundations in all main renewable energy sources: wind energy, solar, biomass, water, hydropower, and ocean energy. And it is taught at 4 locations, so at École des Mines in France, at the University of Loughborough, at the University of Zaragoza in Spain, and the University of Oldenburg in Germany. and it is taught in 3 different languages. So the one key feature is this multilingual and multicultural. Now, what we do as EUREC Agency is just to coordinate the master. The education is provided by these top institutions in EU. And it is also includes a balanced mix in this course semester of theoretical and practical content. Then the specialization semester, which is the second one, has a sole focus on one particular branch of renewable energy technology. The student chooses to specialize in one technologies. Currently there are 4 specializations available: hybrid systems in Germany, bioenergy in Spain, wind energy in Greece, and photovoltaics in the UK. Probably, hopefully, from the next academic year, 2010-2011, we will have a new specialization in solar thermal at Perpignan in France. The specialization semester is already looks at what the students will do afterwards. So indeed alternates in-depth theory classes with extensive practical work in laboratories and in testing facilities. This includes field trips to real-life installation. It includes really also the flexibility for the student to adapt his own learning path, I would say. And it is a truly European experience for the integration also with the other students from all over the world, which will attend these classes. Last, the last 5 months of the master are spent working at the project thesis. Project thesis is developed at the premises of a renewable energy company or research center. So this is a true placement experience. And it adds to the not only European dimension, but really here we go beyond the borders of the European Union, because the student can choose to make this experience wherever he or she wants in the world, provided that the project is approved in advance by the supervising tutor. And at the end of the master program, the student has to defend his master thesis in Brussels in front of a committee of professors from the 7 universities which are involved in the master program. So I will go very quickly on the statistics to leave some space for question and answer at the end of my presentation. This has been a record year for the European Master Renewable Energy, with 54 registered enrolled participants. Country of origin is most of the cases from EU countries, for 7 out of 10, but we also welcome participants from non-EU countries where the academic curricula is qualified. Indeed. Average age is around 27 years, and they speak at least 3 languages, and we have 1 student out of 5 which is a woman. The educational background is in the vast majority from engineering, but we also accept students from physics, from marine sciences, from chemistry, from other sciences, applied sciences, which can be relevant to renewable energy, where they can prove also having a working experience which is relevant with the master program. Well, yes, I will go very quickly here on these statistics, really to leave some space on the question and answer. The learning outcome includes not only the technical skills, which are indeed very important in terms of the strong knowledge, scientific knowledge of renewable energy technologies, and a detailed knowledge of one single renewable energy field. But also professional skills which are very much appreciated by the employer, such as the multidisciplinarity and the flexibility, the ability to work in a multinational team, project management, and problem solving. EUREC supports the master, coordinating the institution, the university which are involved in the master, but also in a number of ways, with a continuous contact all through the year with the renewable energy companies, which will become the employer, hopefully stable employers of the students at the end of the program. And linking the problem with a number of European initiatives like the newly constituted IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, we are exploring together the opportunity of collaboration and raising additional public resources in terms of scholarships. So through Erasmus Mundus, for instance, of ICARI. ICARI is a new initiative of EU-China joint research and education facility to be located in China from the next year. Applicants for next academic year will be able to register from January next year to July, so you have this 6 months from the end of January to the end of July, and we have ongoing contacts with a number of other European universities to expand the offer. I already mentioned the University of Perpignan in France for the solar thermal, but in Portugal, in the Netherlands, in Italy, in Austria, in Denmark, we are already exploring the contacts. Indeed, all new universities have to fulfill the strict requirements that we apply to research centers, university, to become members of EUREC. So they have to demonstrate that they have relevant research facilities in renewable energy technologies and qualified staff. So there is an assessment before accepting new members in the EUREC Agency community. So that's all for me. We will be very happy, Greg and I, to answer your question now. And if there is time, maybe for Greg also to go back to his slides later. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you very much, Simon. Now you can maybe stop your microphone. Thank you. Otherwise, thank you very much. Otherwise, it makes some echoes. So, Fernando Nuño speaking. Thank you very much for your presentation, Simon, Gregory, as well. Thank you very much, Sergio, for hosting the first part of this webinar. So now we have several questions. I see also Sergio, who is quite involved in these issues, has several questions. So maybe Sergio, you can go ahead orally with your questions, and then I will be managing the rest of Q&A session. Please go ahead. Thank you.
You're leading research regarding renewable technology. So how far are you dealing with research also on storage? Because I understand storage is a very important factor, so it acts as a very important buffer for the integration of renewables in the grid. So it is a buffer for the intermittency of these renewable technologies. So in this sense, I would also like for you to expand a little bit on the electric vehicles. So you mentioned smart grids. I would like you to comment on how electric vehicles can act as a storage mechanism for the integration of renewables, and if EUREC is doing something on this. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for the question. I will pass this question to my colleague Greg, because he has been personally involved with electric vehicles, and so just one moment.
Yeah, hello, thank you for the question. Yes, EUREC members do look at storage. We have, for example, the ZSW, which looks at battery technology. Storage is also a concern of the University of Oldenburg and the research center that it's set up with the utility EWE, called EWE Next Energy. We also see that storage in the context of hydrogen and fuel cells has been a popular topic among many of our members for several years. So it's certainly an issue that we look at carefully, and that I think we're going to be increasingly looking at as storage technologies come down in price and as the need for them increases. I think many people would see that it's mainly the capacity and the cost of batteries which is hindering the market uptake of electric vehicles at the moment. And we would see electric vehicles providing their part of an intelligent, smart grid as very much being a useful facility for making the grid more flexible and better able to integrate renewable energy sources from stochastic sources such as wind or sun. I mean, the question really, I think, is whether we are in fact going to see electric vehicles in the rather short time horizons which we read about in the press, and I think that sometimes we can tend to get a little bit carried away with the promises made by the car industry, whether it's about the fleet efficiency of vehicles, the number of grams of CO2 that they emit per kilometre, or whether it's about high technology such as hydrogen and fuel cells. So I'm encouraged to see that there are some vehicles appearing on the market now, but I think that we're still quite a long way. We shouldn't expect great things
well, I have another question, but before that, I'd like to comment. So I'm also involved a little bit on the electric vehicles scene, and I do believe that we're on the edge of assisting to a breakthrough on electric vehicles and battery technology. So I don't think it's so unrealistic to see in the very near future a big amount of electric vehicles in the streets. I wouldn't say that it is so near that these will work as a facilitator for renewable, so as a storage. You mentioned a number of times, and I think you talked quite extensively about emissions trading and carbon capture. So personally, I don't believe that carbon capture and storage is the solution for whatever sustainable energy or a sustainable future that we want to see. I think carbon capture and storage is maybe a solution that was found to keep a subsidized coal industry operational. So I wanted to comment, what is the involvement of EUREC on the CCS issue, and isn't this taking funds out of renewable energy sources research and deployment and energy efficiency as well?
Okay, well, EUREC Agency is an association that represents research centres in renewable energy, so our interest is very much in seeing these sources of energy promoted. In an ideal world, it would have been great if this Any R300 instrument had prioritised renewable energy and renewable energy projects, but it's set up in a way that CCS is definitely going to be a beneficiary of the funding that it implies. And our mission with the resources that are available for us are to make sure that the projects which have been pre-selected for installations genuinely do add some innovative value and will provide experience which is merited by the public subsidy that's given to them. My views are that CCS is a very risky technology to be backing. I think that with CCS we lock ourselves into a fuel source which is only going to increase in price over the coming years, instead of a fuel source which is essentially free, as is the case for sunlight or wind or falling water. I don't see a huge potential for cost reduction in carbon capture either, unlike, say, in photovoltaic technology. And finally, I don't really see whether we can make CCS compatible with an energy system that's becoming increasingly decentralized. We're going to find that energy in the coming years is produced much more closely to where it's consumed, and I'm not sure really what the role of centralized plant is going to be in that scenario.
Good, thank you very much. Well, I think I couldn't agree with you more, and I'm very happy that EUREC has that standing point. Taking a view on the time, I think we're a bit running out of time, so I'll leave one last question, maybe a more open question. EUREC, I think, is pretty much involved in the renewables scene and the scenario setting. So, do you believe, as an association or as individuals, that with what we're currently doing, or business as usual, we are going to reach the target of 20% by 2020? And if you don't, is there something else that we can realistically do? What instruments do we need to put in place to get to 20% by 2020? Thank you.
Okay, well, these are very big questions. I think that it was already... I think, first of all, it's important to realise that having a target of 20% is incredibly motivating. So I think that with this target, which is going to be translated into national objectives, national targets, well, that's already taken place, but also national action plans in member states, which are going to indicate exactly using which sources and you know, what capacity build-up. That's going to be an important indication. I think it's going to be an important roadmap for how we get towards 2020 and the 20% renewables target. I think that what we want to see then, as an association that represents research centres, is that in our enthusiasm now for embracing demonstration plants and for funding which will see first-of-a-kind demonstrations, we don't at the same time lose sight of the fact that medium to long-term research must also be supported. The traditional collaborative research that we find in the framework programme, for example, where research centres over 3 or 4 years of working together in integrated projects or in so-called STREPs are able to find novel approaches which, although they might not be immediately translatable into a commercial product, nonetheless pave the way for industry to make something useful, make something marketable out of the result that they achieve. So I would like to see as an important element in this 2020 strategy that research on all aspects and for all time frames is adequately supported.
Okay, very well. So now let's proceed with some questions from public. And well, we are running out of time, so we will probably answer the rest of the questions in written way through Leonardo Energy website. So a question from Stephen Browen. So storage and electric vehicles. Will using electric vehicles charging to deal with wind unpredictability be tricky if the wind output drops for a number of days?
The renewable energy resource in which you were relying for charging your vehicles was unavailable. Then
one question, thank you.
Those problems, but I think that in the future we're going to just see a more flexible electricity supply system in general, and there'll be different tariffs which will encourage people to charge different loads at different times. And so you may find that although come day 4 you still haven't charged your car, there is an alternative way for you to move around which is accessible to you which you could use instead of your vehicle. Or else your choice as a consumer could be to pay a high price for electricity on that day, specifically to charge your car because you absolutely need it at that point. But I think the way it's going to work with electric vehicles used as a flexibility mechanism in a grid generally is to try to incentivize keeping them plugged into the grid for as long as possible, so that they can react to those moments when renewable energy is abundant and driving down prices on power exchanges, and they can avoid having to be charged at moments where renewable energy is scarce.
Okay, thank you very much. So another question coming from Nigeria, from Eddie Ibrook. So with your breakthrough so far, is there any hope of African nations gaining from any of this, with particular reference to Nigeria, where a complete overhaul is presently ongoing on the power sector, and technology suggestions are highly required and welcome to tap on numerous available resources: biofuel, solar, wind, landfill gas. So yes, the question is whether in Nigeria, for instance, which is now involved in a power sector evolution and
Well,
reform, whether there is a possibility
certainly the focus of my
to fit
work
with
here
some
in
inputs
the EUREC
from
Agency,
this core research
is
in
to
Europe.
look
Thank you.
at European level funding that's available for research centres and industry based here in Europe. And certainly I'm no expert on the funding that's available for facilities overseas. Certainly a lot of my members do look at renewable energy projects overseas, including in Africa, to see what kind of resource is available, and to offer advice on how the resource can be developed. I'm thinking, for example, of our member DLR, which is a keen proponent of the Desertec project to deploy concentrating solar power in the countries of North Africa surrounding the Mediterranean. Of specific initiatives involving Nigeria, however, I don't think I can think of a specific way that I can help you there. I think that if you were perhaps able to supply some information in writing, then I might be able to have a look to see which part of the Commission might be most relevant for you to address.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we have to adjourn. Thank you very much to attend this webinar. There are some remaining questions on the master, how much it costs, and so on. I think the best way is to be directly in touch with our speakers today in order to have more details on this. The rest of questions will be answered and published in Leonardo Energy website, which you will be noticed through
learn a few things. I think there's
a
a lot
newsletter.
of open questions.
So now,
And
thank you
also
very much,
you
everybody.
follow them up with
I give the
Simone
floor
and Greg.
to speakers
So
and to
thank you both,
Sergio just
and
to
I'll keep in touch.
say the
And
final words.
thank you
Thank
to
you very
all the
much.
participants for joining us today.